Before anyone knew her name, before headlines and courtrooms, there was just a girl who believed she was starting over. She was 17, confident, full of plans, and convinced the hardest parts of her life were already behind her. She had crossed oceans, rebuilt her future, and trusted the wrong person at exactly the wrong moment. What happened next wouldn't just end a young life. It would expose a chain of warning signs that almost everyone ignored until it was far too late. This is the story of Emily Longley. Emily was born in England in 1994 to Mark and Caroline Longley. 2 years later, her younger sister Hannah arrived, and from the start, the two were inseparable. Their home was loud, affectionate, and steady, the kind of place where support was never in question. Family meant everything. When Emily was 9 and Hannah was 7, life changed. The Longleys relocated to Auckland, New Zealand, and what began as a major disruption quickly became home. Emily adapted easily. She made friends fast, stood out without trying, and grew into someone people naturally gravitated toward. But as she entered her teenage years, her parents noticed a shift. New friends, risky choices, a crowd they didn't trust. Wanting to protect her, and hoping distance might help, they made a difficult decision. Emily would return to England for a fresh start. In 2010, she flew back alone and enrolled at Brocklehurst College. She moved in with her grandparents in Bournemouth, a seaside town known for its nightlife and carefree atmosphere. Emily had plans. She wanted to study business. She dreamed of modeling. And for the first time, she felt fully independent. She settled in quickly. Teachers described her as bright and social. Friends remembered her humor, her confidence, the way she could command attention without meaning to. Life seemed to be opening up exactly the way she hoped. Back in New Zealand, her parents had recently divorced but remained on good terms. Hannah was still in school. Despite the distance, the family stayed close. In early 2011, Emily met a man who would change everything. His name was Elliot Turner. He was older, charming at first glance, and deeply eager to impress. To people around him, he projected confidence and status. To Emily, he seemed exciting, someone who fit into the fast, adult life she was building. They began dating. At first, it felt harmless. Nights out, parties, a relationship that looked intense but temporary. Emily didn't see it as serious. In April 2011, she flew back to New Zealand to visit her family for the first time in 6 months. Her father met her at the airport. She ran straight into his arms. Over the next few weeks, Emily seemed relaxed and happy. Over pizza at her favorite place, she talked about school, modeling, and mentioned Elliot casually. When her parents asked how serious it was, she shrugged it off. "I don't think it's going anywhere," she said. "I'll probably end it when I go back." No one at that table imagined those words would matter so much. When Emily returned to England, something had already shifted. The warmth she'd felt in New Zealand faded quickly as real life settled back in. Within days, she told her father she had ended things with Elliot. She didn't go into detail, just said it was over, clean, final. Or at least that's what she hoped. What she didn't say was how intense Elliot's reaction had been. One of the things that triggered him were the photos Emily had posted while she was away. Pictures with friends, smiling, relaxed. Some included other men. To Elliot, that wasn't harmless. It was betrayal. His jealousy escalated almost immediately. Elliot Turner was 20 years old, the son of a wealthy jeweler, and he lived a life that looked easy from the outside. He was well known in Bournemouth and nearby Poole, especially in bars and clubs. He surrounded himself with other privileged young men who referred to themselves as the firm. They drank heavily, partied constantly, and rarely faced consequences. Elliot thrived on attention. He didn't have a job. His parents funded his lifestyle, and he made no secret of it. Friends nicknamed him All Talk Turner because he was always boasting about money, power, influence. Online, he exaggerated that image even further, adopting fake street language and presenting himself as untouchable. He liked to be feared. He liked control. This wasn't new behavior. Years earlier, as a teenager, police had issued him a harassment warning after he relentlessly contacted an ex-girlfriend who had broken up with him. At the time, it was brushed off as immaturity, a phase. But the pattern never stopped. With Emily, it surfaced fast. Arguments became explosive. His mood could switch without warning. People who knew him described him as aggressive, obsessive, and easily provoked. He monitored Emily's social life, criticized what she wore, and resented anyone who had access to her attention. At one point, he threatened her life. Emily tried to manage him instead of confronting him outright. In a handwritten note, she laid out clear boundaries. She told him she loved him, but begged him to stop talking about killing her, to stop bringing up his ex, to stop being so aggressive. She admitted he scared her when he acted intimidating. It was a warning and a plea. But control feels like entitlement to people like Elliot. Rejection wasn't something he accepted. It was something he needed to correct. On the night of May 6, 2011, Emily went out with friends. Surveillance footage showed her arriving at a nightclub, unaware she was being watched more closely than she realized. That same evening, Elliot had been reading her Facebook messages. He discovered she was seeing someone else. By the time he arrived at the club, he was already furious. Witnesses later said the confrontation was immediate, loud, hostile. Emily threw her drink in his face. Elliot shouted back, criticizing her outfit, accusing her, threatening her. The relationship was over, but he refused to let go. Emily left. Elliot followed, and as the night unfolded, people around them heard words that would later haunt the investigation. Threats spoken casually as if consequences didn't exist at all. After leaving the club, Emily wanted distance, space, an end to the confrontation that had already ruined her night. But Elliot wasn't finished. Friends later recalled hearing him make chilling remarks as he followed her. Statements about prison not mattering, about money-making consequences irrelevant. The words sounded like bravado at the time, the kind of empty threats people assumed he always made. Emily didn't see them as empty. Somewhere along the way, Elliot managed to convince her to go back with him. He said they could talk privately, calmly, away from everyone else. He still lived with his parents, and that may have reassured her. Maybe she thought the presence of adults would keep things from escalating. Maybe she just wanted the argument to stop. Neighbors later saw them arrive at the Turner house together. Inside, the home looked quiet, ordinary. Nothing about it suggested what would follow. Elliot's parents were there that night. Nothing unusual was reported. No shouting. No sounds that raised alarm. What happened behind closed doors would only emerge later, pieced together from fragments, recordings, and testimony. The next morning, just after 9 a.m., Elliot's mother, Anita Turner, called emergency services. She told the operator that Emily wouldn't wake up. Her tone was calm, controlled, almost detached. As the operator gave instructions, Anita followed them carefully, step by step. When paramedics arrived, it was already too late. 17-year-old Emily Longley was pronounced dead at the scene. In New Zealand, the news arrived in the middle of the night. Emily's father, Mark, woke to missed calls and a voice message he could barely understand. Then he heard his ex-wife screaming in the background. "Emily is dead." He refused to believe it. He called England immediately. When his mother answered, she was sobbing. Moments later, a police officer confirmed what Mark couldn't accept. His daughter was gone. Just days earlier, she had been laughing in his living room, talking about the future, promising she'd be back soon. At first, police suggested Emily had died in her sleep. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no immediate explanation. She was young, healthy. There was no reason for her to simply not wake up. An autopsy was ordered. While the family waited for answers, investigators began looking into Emily's final days. What they found quickly shifted the tone of the case. They learned about the argument at the nightclub, the threats Elliot had made, not just once, but repeatedly. They found messages, witnesses, patterns of behavior that no longer looked like coincidence. They also found something Emily herself had posted online just days before her death. "I have a stalker," she wrote. Someone had called her, claiming to know everything about her, refusing to say how they got her number, refusing to stop. It was no longer possible to see Emily's death as unexplained. The question wasn't if something had happened. It was who inside that house knew more than they were saying. The autopsy didn't give investigators a clean answer, but it gave them direction. Medical examiners couldn't immediately determine an exact cause of death. There were no obvious external injuries that explained why a healthy 17-year-old would suddenly die overnight. But there were signs that couldn't be ignored. Subtle injuries to Emily's neck. Findings that were consistent with pressure being applied. The kind that doesn't always leave dramatic marks. Strangulation became a possibility. With that, the case shifted. Detectives began re-examining everything Elliot Turner and his parents had told them. All three insisted nothing unusual had happened that night. They said they'd heard no shouting, no argument. Elliot claimed he went to bed and woke up to find Emily unresponsive beside him. But the more investigators learned about Elliot's past, the less convincing that story became. Friends described his jealousy as obsessive, his temper as explosive. Multiple people confirmed he had threatened Emily's life, not as a joke, not once, but repeatedly. He'd said it so often that those around him stopped reacting. Police also learned about the note Emily had written, begging him to stop being aggressive, to stop scaring her. It painted a very different picture of their relationship than the one Elliot presented. Then came a crucial decision. Believing that the truth might come out when the family thought no one was listening, investigators installed covert listening devices inside the Turner home. What they recorded changed everything. On the tapes, Elliot could be heard coaching his mother on what to say to police, telling her how to explain delays, what details to avoid, how to act. His father, Lee, sounded uncomfortable at first, aware that something was wrong, but ultimately went along with it. And then, buried among hours of conversations, detectives heard what they had been waiting for. Elliot admitting responsibility for Emily's death. Not in a dramatic confession, not in tears, but casually, as if he were talking through a problem he expected to outmaneuver. He talked about his anger, about how no one had ever made him feel that furious before, about how everything had spiraled out of control. A week after Emily died, Elliot Turner was arrested. He denied everything. His legal team immediately challenged the recordings, arguing they were unreliable and taken out of context. But after reviewing the evidence, a judge ruled that the audio could be used in court. As the case moved toward trial, investigators uncovered more troubling details. Searches on computers inside the Turner home about strangulation, about avoiding punishment, about consequences, and how to escape them. What initially looked like a tragic mystery was now unmistakably a homicide, and the courtroom would soon hear Elliot's version of events, a story that placed the blame everywhere except where the evidence pointed. The trial began in May 2012. From the start, Elliot Turner's defense centered on one claim, that he had acted in self-defense. According to him, the argument in his bedroom had escalated unexpectedly. He said Emily became aggressive, hitting and kicking him, and that he panicked. On the stand, Elliot described himself as frightened and overwhelmed. He told the jury that he had tried to calm her down, that he had begged her to stop. When that didn't work, he claimed, he grabbed her by the neck, not to hurt her, but to restrain her. When asked how hard he had grabbed her, he hesitated, then admitted it was quite hard. He said he pushed her onto the bed, pressed down on her neck for several seconds, and then let go. He insisted he never intended to kill her. According to his account, he believed she had simply fallen asleep. He said he left the room and didn't realize she was dead until she failed to wake up the next morning. The prosecution dismantled that narrative piece by piece. Medical experts explained how pressure applied for just seconds could be fatal. They pointed out that Emily's injuries aligned with manual strangulation. Not an accident, not a brief restraint. Then there were Elliot's own words. The recordings played in court captured him expressing rage long after Emily's death, complaining, rationalizing, coaching his parents. At no point did he sound confused or panicked. He sounded calculating. The jury also heard about bags already packed when police arrived, about Elliot's passport found in his pocket, about a letter he had written to his mother expressing shame and hinting at plans to leave the country, a letter his father later destroyed. Witnesses testified about Elliot's threats, his obsession, his belief that money and status made him untouchable. Even from custody, he bragged to friends that the jury would believe him, that he'd soon be free, rich, and famous. Emily's father, Mark, sat through every detail. He later spoke about how unbearable it was to hear his daughter's final moments reduced to legal arguments, how every birthday, every holiday now carried a weight that never lifted. What haunted him most wasn't just losing Emily, it was losing the future she never got to live, the woman she would have become. When closing arguments ended, the jury didn't deliberate long. Elliot Turner was found guilty of murder. The courtroom fell silent as the decision was read. For Emily's family, it brought no relief, only confirmation of what they had already known. A life sentence followed, with a minimum term of 16 years. Standing before the court, the judge described Turner as a man of striking arrogance, someone who mistook control for love. Emily, she said, was kind, vibrant, and full of life. A young woman who brought light into the lives of those around her, a light that had been extinguished needlessly. The court rejected Elliot's claim of self-defense. The evidence showed dominance, not fear, intent, not accident. The judge made it clear that Emily had never been a partner to him. She had been a possession. But Elliot Turner was not the only one held accountable. His parents, Anita and Lee Turner, were also charged. The jury heard how they had helped their son after Emily's death, delaying the emergency call, removing items from the room, destroying a letter in which Elliot confessed. They had chosen loyalty over truth. Both were convicted of perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 27 months in prison. In court, recordings captured the weight of their decisions. At one point, Lee questioned whether they had done the right thing. Anita answered without hesitation, "We've done the right thing."